In this lesson, you're going to learn how to use variables in your code and some of the rules and style guidelines behind that. To get there though, to create a variable, you have to learn about something called the assignment operator. So let's start with the second word, operator. An operator is a symbol, such as plus or minus, that performs an operation on one or more values. You used one earlier of like 2 plus 2, and it performs addition in that case. If it was 2 minus 2, it would perform subtraction. In the case of assignment, values are assigned to variable names using a special symbol called the assignment operator, which is a single equal sign, and this can be a little confusing. You'll get to learn more about how this assignment operator works and how it's not necessarily comparing two things and saying that they're equal to each other. It's actually giving the value and assigning it to that variable's name. The operator takes the value that's on the right side of the operator and it assigns it to the name on the left. Let me have a look at that in the interactive window. Type this. If you're going to make a variable, its name is salutation. To assign it a value, you use the equal sign, the assignment operator. You're going to give it the string literal of hello world. If you were to type print, then, as the value, choose to use the variable name salutation, you would get the same output as if you were to have it print the literal itself, hello world. Now, if you were to type salutation by itself, you would see it would be assigned to the string literal hello world. What if you were to make a typo when you went to print and you chose capital salutation? This is a valid code again. It shows that as far as the syntax is concerned, this works, but when I press enter, you can see that I got a runtime error of a name error. The name salutation is not defined. And then again, this is an advantage of Python where it's actually giving you a little better idea of the context of what's happening. And it says, did you mean salutation? Because there is a variable named salutation in here, which is really nice. This is an update. You might not see this in an earlier version of Python. So yeah, the case that you're using in a variable's name is important, and they are completely different. You might have learned in other programming contexts that maybe capitalization didn't matter, but in the case of Python, it does. Now there are rules of valid variables and names inside of Python, again, to avoid things like syntax error. Variable names can contain uppercase and lowercase letters. Any of those are fine. It can include digits. It can include underscores. And the one trick though is that it can't begin with a number, can't begin with a digit. So let me give you a couple of examples. So a valid Python name could be a string 1 or an underscore A1S4 or list underscore of underscore cities. Some of the things that would not be valid would be starting with a number, so 5 cable or 65 tour. So just keep that in mind. You can't start with a number, can't start with a digit. Okay? Great. In addition to the alphabetic characters that we just talked about and the digits and the underscore, Python variable names can contain Unicode characters. Unicode, if you're not familiar with it, is a standard for digitally representing characters, and they're used in most of the world's writing systems. So let me give you a couple of examples of things you might have seen. So, decorated letters in French or Spanish or German, where you have like E with an accent on it, or U with an umlaut, different things like that are decorated. You can use those characters in Chinese, Japanese, or Arabic symbols, but not every system that you run your code in can display these characters. So it's something to be careful with, and it may work better to use the ones that we specified a little bit earlier. You're going to learn a lot more about Unicode in a much later section, but I'll also include some resources if you want to jump ahead. Choosing a good name for a variable is difficult. There are a few memes out there that show someone thinking really hard of how do I come up with a name? And there are some guidelines that you may want to follow. The first one that I want to share with you is keeping things descriptive can be much better than keeping them super short. A variable named s is kind of difficult to know your intention of what that variable is, especially if it was something like seconds. That might be much more useful, or even more explicit and descriptive would be seconds per hour. That may seem to you like a lot to type. What you'll learn is that there are lots of tools when you're working with an editor that can help you complete the names of things so that you don't have to worry much about keeping things super tight and short. It can be much more useful for you going forward to have a descriptive name than just a simple short name. A good rule of thumb is to maybe limit the variable name to 3 or 4 words at maximum. Alright, so I said that you could use lowercase or uppercase letters. Well, where should you use them? The case that you should use can vary depending on what you're wanting to do, but there are some guidelines. Let's talk about different ways that this can be done. One term that's used is mixed case, where you start with, say, lowercase letters, and then every individual word that you're adding inside of that variable name, you make it uppercase for the first letter of it. So here's some examples. So like a number of students could be num capital students, or a list of capital names, and so forth. So that's called mixed case. The other way to do it is to use underscores, keeping everything lowercase and then using an underscore in between each one of these. This is also referred to as snake case. That's what those variables would look like in snake case, or lowercase with underscores. In Python, it is more common to write variable names in that style. It's not prohibited to use mixed case, but it typically is more in the style of Python generally to do it that style. In fact, there's a whole topic about this, and it's referred to as PEP 8. PEP 8 is widely regarded as the official style guide for writing Python. How things are named, how things should be formatted, how things should look. And you can learn a lot more about it by looking at this website, pep8.org. Someone has created this site to kind of give you a tour of all the features in a nice formatted way. There's more information. I'll include a link in the description. Following the standards outlined, and PEP 8 will ensure that your Python code is readable code to most Python programmers. It'll look in this style of other Python users. As far as the name PEP, it stands for Python Enhancement Protocol. A PEP is a design document. It is used by the Python community to propose new features or changes to the language. When working with variables, it's nice to be able to inspect the values, and you can do that inside the interactive window. To inspect the value that a variable holds right now, you can type the name of the variable by itself at the prompt. Just typing the name by itself at the prompt will often display something different than what is displayed compared to using print. You can also learn about what the type of variable it is by putting the name of the variable in type. Let me show you what those look like. Let's say you created a variable of x, and x is going to be assigned it the value of 2. If I type x and inspect the variable, you can see its value is 2. And if I were to print, I get the same output. Now it might look a little different if I were to, say, assign y to the value of string literal 2. So this is text instead of an actual numeric value. So in that case, if I type y, you'll see that it outputs something slightly different versus if I were to print it. So that can be a little confusing. And what you'll learn is that these are different types, and they're interpreted differently inside of Python. And this is a big subject that you're going to dive into in much later sections. One thing you can check is you can say type. You can see here that it'll ask for the object or name, and then it's going to return. That's what the arrow is indicating, the object's type. And this is just a preview, so try it out with X. It says that it is a class of integer, now versus type of Y. Y is the class of a string, and they're represented differently when you simply just enter in the name of the variable. And keep this in mind that variable inspection like this, it only works in this interactive window inside of an REPL. For example, try running the following program from the editor window. So here, let's say we start by defining salutation, and it says it equals hello world. And then on the next line, simply type salutation. What's it going to output when you run this program? As you can see, when it ran it, it didn't output anything. That type of inspection of a variable only works here in the interactive window. Thanks for watching.